All right, welcome everyone. This afternoon we're focusing this webinar on strategic planning for the American Society of Agronomy. My name is Nick Gazer. I'm the CEO for the American Society of Agronomy, and with me, I believe on the line is Sylvie Roder, the current president, who will jump in at times to help me with some background context, some thoughts, some perspectives throughout this town hall. The intent of this town hall is to gain your input, your perspectives on not only the strategic planning process up to date, but specifically on the draft strategies and objectives that we have for ASA moving forward. We want to hear what's important to you. We want to hear your input, your questions, your comments, areas of emphasis, concerns with what we have. And then we would love to hear your follow-up after the fact as well. We're introducing the strategies and objectives right now during this town hall, and we'll have as we wrap up today, we'll show you where you can have access to these after the fact to provide comments and more input after the fact as well for board consideration as we move towards finalization. First, just a quick check, Sylvie, are you on the line? Susan, do you know if Sylvie's on the line?
Oh, there. You're controlling my muting, so you have to unmute
okay,
me
well,
if you want me to speak, because I cannot speak. I cannot unmute myself. Yes, thank you. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to attend this virtual town hall. We're all doing virtual everything all the time now, I think, and sometimes it can be a little too much virtualness, I think. But I just wanted to say a couple words about the importance of your participation in the strategic plan. We are a member organization, and we exist for the members. And so what matters to you is what is going to matter in the strategic plan. I think to me, it's an incredibly exciting but also challenging time to think about where science is going. And some of this excitement and challenge predates the COVID-19 crisis, but some has been brought into relief by it. We started the process actually a year ago, and we started with this effort to try to develop a grand challenge that was common across the societies that the three societies could work together on. But to me, the plan is also exciting because it includes explicit elements about translating science into useful things and practice. However, in the strategic plan, there are also some really important things to help us face some of the challenges that are out there for us. And this includes things like the change to open science, and many of you know Wiley is now our publisher, but even before COVID-19, there was a lot of pressure to change to open access, and that is going to change how we do business with our journals, and it will also change our business model somewhat. And COVID-19 is going to drive that as well, because we are at a point where the rate at which science needs to be made available is perceived to be faster than ever before. And the COVID-19 crisis is really emphasizing the need to release structured data with papers so that those data can be integrated into analyses. And also, honestly, COVID-19 may interfere with how we meet and exchange science. So it's a tremendously challenging time, but a great time to be thinking strategically. I'll stop right there.
Thank you, Sylvie. And just a couple notes on the structure today as we're going through the town hall. We'll have some background context as to where we started, what the process we're going through, and some potential outcomes for not only the strategic planning, but as Sylvie mentioned, the grand challenge, which I would agree are very excited. This is a very exciting, but also impactful time for you all to engage. And then after that time, so we'll take a break, a little bit of a pause at that point to really hear your input, your questions on the process, and the potential outcomes for the strategic planning process or the strategic plan itself for the implementation efforts and the grand challenge for that as well. And then we'll move into the strategies. We'll walk one by one through the 4 strategies we have for ASA to talk a little bit more about the intent behind those strategies, to gather your input on those. We'll have another time and point after the strategies for more open discussion. And then there'll be a third section really focused on the objectives for ASA as well. And after that, we'll have another open call for discussion and comments. So please, throughout the entire town hall today, feel free to submit your comments, your questions, really across the board through the questions feature or the chat feature within GoToWebinar. During those break points, we'll have everyone can speak verbally at that point as well. So, and then after this conversation today, don't hesitate at all to submit emails through the Contact Us feature, through any one of your board members, to Sylvia, or really to myself or headquarters staff as well. And then we'll have discussion boards that we can talk about a little bit more in just a few minutes. So with that, we're going to jump into the process. And Sylvia, I'm going to probably pull you in here again because you were part of this process long before I was, because I jumped on board in December, and this is where I've been focusing my attention, but I wasn't part of the early phases of the process. But in terms of the plan, so I'll pull you in just a second, Sylvie. Before we go too much further, just in terms of the plan structure and how we're setting up the plan with ASA, and this is consistent across each of the 3 societies: American Society of Agronomy, Crop Science Society of America, and Soil Science Society of America. Each individual society is unique, independent, but we are following some common themes or common elements in the planning process. Having a background in diagnosis with factors influencing ASA, and last month in March we talked about a landscape analysis, and I welcome your thoughts and your inputs on the landscape analysis or the operational business analysis. So what's happening around us as a society that could affect how impactful we are with our efforts in advancing the science and our membership. And then within the strategic planning approach, jumping from there, we're looking at the vision and mission for the society, but then very specifically looking at the strategies, our aspirational strategies to work towards kind of a why element to work towards the mission and the vision and the mission. And then within the society specific objectives, those are specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, time-sensitive objectives that are working to help work towards the strategies with it that are specific to ASA. And next month, as part of that conversation at Town Hall, we'll be talking about this last element, the cross-society objective. So this is a little bit of a preview as to what's to come. And this cross-society objective area of the strategic plan is an area looking at these objectives that would be shared across the 3 societies for impact and shared resources. So this is a little bit on the plan structure. And then some inputs into this process. We realize one of the primary drivers historically has been the board leadership and direction, really feeding from the membership, input from the membership, and the direct ties to our membership structure and our leadership structure, with several points of input into the plans. The board, and then members just like yourselves, our certified professional audiences, providing input into this as well. And this time around, we added this landscape analysis to ask what's happening around us, take an external point of view. And then as part of that too, trying to bring input from external partners and collaborators through the landscape analysis, but also from individual conversations. And then we're using several tactics to gather input into for review for for comments. Namely, those tactics would include our discussion boards, where we've already posted the landscape analysis. So you can go to the discussion board and find the landscape analysis there, and we will post the strategies and objectives there after this conversation. We're also engaging in social media. We're having these town hall events. So we've done surveys, and there are a number of other tactics as well. But Sylvie, would you have any comments very quickly on the drivers, the inputs, or the tactics for the plan up to this point?
Sure. I think, yes, we did start, in fact, over a year ago in this process. And so some of you may be wondering why it's taken us so long, but we pushed the pause button when Ellen departed. We really did get a lot done at a meeting last June in Florida. And much of what you're going to look at today in terms of the strategies was surfaced there and roughed out there under Gary Przinski's leadership. And he wrote a very nice document that was the foundation from which we have pulled what you're going to look at today. But we decided to press the pause button, one, to give Nick the opportunity to get on board, and then to learn a bit more about us, and then view the landscape around the ASA from his perspective. And that was done, that led to the landscape analysis, literally. And since then, we have been working very hard to figure out how to operationalize the plan.
Thank you, Sylvie. I'll keep going on the background, and this I'll move through relatively quickly to open up some time for comments. So as I mentioned, just in terms of the structure, each individual society is independent, and will have a very unique plan focused on the individual society. But I think it's helpful in looking across the three societies with ASF referenced here as well. And within ASA on the left, we have for that plan a lot of board input, member input, and then we have the quantifiable strategies and objectives we'll talk about. And as we go through this, we also recognize the connection to the cross-society objectives, a number of different topic areas we'll talk about next month. And we'll get into a lot of detail into several of these cross-society objectives around membership, diversity, inclusion, leadership, publications, and other ways that way. But there are connection points across our societies. This is being articulated in these plans this time around as well. We've had close connections across the societies for forever. This is to put it into the strategic plan with some language around it as well. We also have the Grand Challenge, and this Grand Challenge came out of the planning meeting that Sylvie referenced last June. And what we're realizing in terms of support for that Grand Challenge would be a Grand Challenge task force. So these are a number of elements moving simultaneously amongst the plans, the Grand Challenge, the cross-society objectives, and what we're helping to realize around operationalizing this, as Sylvie mentioned, would be the resources to properly outfit and give life to that Grand Challenge. So this task force will be formed to bring recommendations to the boards for work on the Grand Challenge, thinking both internally and externally, bringing in representatives from each of the three societies and external organizations that can help us in that work towards the Grand Challenge. And then ultimately at the staff level, what we're working on is implementation, preparing for implementation of the three strategic plans. This would be the very specific actions. This would be the engagements with you as members, very tangibly that way. It'd be around communications and transparency, and ensuring that we're all very closely aligned with the directions set forth within the strategic plans from the departments listed on the left from the access staff. And ultimately, as we're looking at this and setting forth the vision to where this can go, there are cycles in all this. That this plan will not be set forth and then set on a shelf for 3 years. That this will be under review at a frequency of every 6 months. we'll be looking at the strategies and objectives, assessing progress towards the plan, and then on an annual basis, we'll reserve the right to bring in input and form recommendations back to the board as to any tweaks or adjustments we need to make based on things within our control or landscape changes that we need to account for within the strategic plan. And so I'm moving through this very quickly, but another key element in this is thinking to the partnerships. Who can we work with from different societies, from different players on the ground, from the certified professional audience, from different organizations that can help extend our work and our influence and our impact across the society to advance science and serve you as members. And I'll pause here again for the outcomes because this looks both internally and externally, and there are a number of different components of both the internal and external outcomes that could be brought forth. So internally, it's a focus on the strategic intent with inclusivity and a culture of innovation that's really fostered to advance the science and the impact of your work collectively. Internally, this is also thinking to potential different functions at the staff level to better serve you as members and better advance the science and all the impacts that we have. This is also leadership development and strong governance to ensure that as a member you have a voice and it's heard, it's listened to, and you have a clear and transparent pathway to follow in leadership development and that can serve you throughout your career. And then it's business stability, the financial security, different options that way. Externally, it's recognition and connectivity for impact and influence as well. Awareness and recognition, being able to better serve and raise awareness of the impacts to policy, industry, conservation, many different sectors that could be listed out based on, again, your work at raising the tide to support you all. And ultimately creating impact to agriculture and environmental outcomes, better food security, better environmental outcomes from the food production, fuel production, fiber production, better, more effective partnerships and collaborations to advance all of this, increase science literacy on a public standpoint, and then broader support for science and development of that science through translational efforts. So with this, again, moving very quickly in the nature of time, but wanted to pause here and ask for your any questions, comments, or input at this point. And Sylvie, please feel free to jump in as I just went through that process very quickly as well.
Yeah, Nick, I think the main thing I would like to stress is that the reason the grand challenge sort of sits to the side, you'll see as we go into the strategies that it's the first of several strategies, but the reason it sort of sits to the side there is because of the strategies we're looking at. It's one that we feel requires some additional maturation and member input in that maturation process. So whereas some of the other strategies that we're looking at within ASA, we feel they're more mature, more set to go. We can figure out the objectives that we want to have underneath them and what we're going to do. The grand challenge needs some more sussing out.
Great point. So let me move to this slide and open it up. Susan Chapman, I think you have the controls on muting or any questions that have come in. If you have any questions, we'd love to hear those now before we move to the strategies themselves.
Yes, Nick, we do have questions. Yes, so if you do have questions at any time during this presentation, use that question box and we are keeping track of them. So we were on the Grand Challenge, and Nick, there are a couple of questions. Can you explain the difference between the cross-society objectives and the Grand Challenge?
Yeah, this is a great point, and Sylvie, I'll pull you into this as well. But what I'm looking at is the difference between the cross-society objectives and the Grand Challenge is actually very similar to what Sylvie just mentioned in terms of maturity and the different elements in those cross-society objectives. So if I jump back here, the Grand Challenge is looking at creating a movement, creating a social movement for change And these cross-society objectives are maybe the more mature elements that we're working on collectively that could serve as a starting point for that grand challenge, but that grand challenge could extend much more broadly to work in and amongst these topics while going further to bring in external partners and create that social movement. So these cross-society objectives are maybe a little bit more internally facing across the societies, while there are some external engagement components of this. Whereas the grand challenge itself would be creating a social movement that would be in its nature very externally focused and creating a wave of change that way. But Sylvie, I wasn't at the workshop last year. These are just my perspectives. What would you offer there?
Well, I think what I would offer is that the grand challenge was designed to be an umbrella concept goal that all three societies would contribute to. The way we've organized, so it is, you'll see in a second, it is, what is it that we envision all three societies doing? And my understanding is that in terms of the strategies, each of the three societies do have that strategy, the Grand Challenge as one of their 4 strategies. Is that correct, Nick?
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is one of them.
Right. But then what we might do there might be things that only A does relative to that grand challenge, or there might be things that we do jointly. And so then those get into the, is it a society specific objective to participate in the grand challenge this way, or is it a cross society objective?
Thank you, Sylvie. Susan, are there additional questions?
There are. There's a couple along the same lines, so I will bring them together. Who will be or has been selected to be part of the Grand Challenge Task Force? And is that something that members can volunteer to be a part of? And then how would they do that?
Sure. We're still working on the structure for the Grand Challenge Task Force. What's been approved by the boards up to this point has been the concept for Grand Challenge Task Force, but not all the specifics as to the Grand Challenge Task Force structure, the participants, all of those elements. That's coming up in the next month or so with our board calls in April and our spring board meetings coming up. What's been proposed up to this point for the Grand Challenge Task Force members, that there would be first one task force that would have representatives from each of the 3 societies. So there'd be up to, what's been proposed up to this point would be up to 5 individuals from agronomy, from crops, and from soils. So that would be 15 members there. And then there would be an external participant pool for representation as well. And those external participants could be partners, could be organizations we've collaborated with from the science space, but also from sectors we haven't engaged with much previously, to bring in external inputs as to help us think creatively and critically about where we go with the Grand Challenge on the different elements that agronomy, crops, and soils work on together. So that's at the proposal stage right now, and likely to shift some. We would certainly welcome member volunteers to submit their names via through discussion boards, getting engaged there, but also submitting emails to staff as well to let us know that you're interested. We're really, across this whole process, not only strategic planning, but the Grand Challenge as well, are looking at member input as critical to this process. So the more, the better. And we would absolutely welcome your interest in that Grand Challenge Task Force as well.
Okay. There is another question that's come in that you referenced partnerships. What kinds of partnerships could help us, and who would we turn to?
There are a number of partnerships already in place across agronomy, but several of the other societies as well. Specific to agronomy, we already have partnerships in place that support our certification, our education, and other elements of that advance our science. And going forward, we could enhance those. We could enhance the certification program, and we'll see in the strategies and objectives coming up. That's certainly a focus, both at the strategy level and at the objective level, to advance the knowledge translation, the knowledge to action, as it's put, to better create impact from the science that's being conducted across our membership base, and link that to impact on the ground. There are other partnerships in the policy arena, or within the conservation space, within the industry space, or others, to help improve science literacy, to help improve sustainable supply chain engagements. There's this ecosystem service market space, and that's affecting a lot of our work, and how that work impacts the ground and our certified professionals and farmers as well. There are partnerships around that space that could help us think critically about where we would want to engage and how. How do we reduce uncertainties in corporate sustainability commitments or otherwise? So there are a number of different avenues we could go. And that is yet to be, that really needs to be vetted out through not only the Grand Challenge Task Force, but then through the cross-society objectives, and very specifically within ASA as well, going forward, as to not only what the strategies are, what the objectives are, but where the partnerships fit in to advance those objectives and the strategies to work towards the vision and the mission for agronomy.
Okay, and we do have another question. It's really, I think, more on the process, and provides you with an opportunity, Nick, to plug the webinar for the CCAs. The question was, have you ever surveyed former CCAs on why they left?
There actually was a fairly substantial CCA survey that it's either just wrapping up or very close to wrapping up, in which we asked a whole number of questions. But this is a great question to be asking, and a way to engage the CCAs. And as Susan Chapman just mentioned, this isn't a survey, but it's a town hall, very similar to this one, to engage strictly the CCA audience on the strategies and inputs for the strategic plan, to ensure that we're capturing the CCA audience input into the strategic plan itself, that we can serve that audience incredibly well, because it is a critical part as to what we do, and how we create the translational research products or development products to extend the research and really create that impact from the research itself. Sylvie, would you want to jump in and provide any comments there as well, as to the CCA audience and engagement?
Well, I think we are keenly aware of the need to make sure that the CCA audience is included in the development of the plan. And, especially perhaps because we are looking at our ability to translate science to practice, and we shouldn't do things that are going to translate science into things that aren't the highest priority for our CCAs. So trying to have an understanding about and setting up a mechanism for iterative feedback from the CCAs about how that strategy is working and what are better ideas. We really need to get into a stronger iterative engagement with CCAs.
I love that. And that's definitely something we need to be working on. All right, I think just given the time, we're going to move into the strategies. So Susan Chapman, any remaining questions we can follow up maybe after the fact through the discussion boards or direct contact to those submitting questions. So please continue to put your questions together and submit them via the chat function. And recognize after this we'll have more time as well for this iterative feedback input, as Sylvie just mentioned. So we're going to move into the strategy section. I split this up into two different slides just to focus a little bit strategy to strategy. In total, there are 4 strategies specific to ASA. As Sylvia had mentioned, the first strategy is really focused on the grand challenge, and that's driving soil, plant, water, environmental system solutions for healthy people on a healthy planet in a rapidly changing climate. And within this grand challenge statement, we specified that we're going to work collaboratively with crop science and soil science to leverage the assets of the 3 societies and external partners to bring about measurable change. So that's the first strategy. I'll read the second one, and then we can maybe go into a little bit of the intent on these 2 before going to the next 2. So the next one is knowledge to action, and this one's been referenced a bit already. Translate research into practice, driving solutions to relevant societal issues. We'll enhance translational efforts where new knowledge is translated into practice, as well as enhancing the deployment of and equitable access to existing knowledge via open science initiatives. So this is, I guess, both of these we've referenced already in the webinar. The first one, as Sylvie had mentioned earlier, is really dedicated to that grand challenge, advancing the grand challenge, the work across the 3 societies collectively, recognizing that not all societies will have the same prioritization of all the different efforts that come from the Grand Challenge Task Force or the member input into the Grand Challenge itself, but collectively we'll work together to bring about measurable change as identified in this Grand Challenge statement. That's where a lot of this one is focused on in working towards that. The knowledge to action strategy, just in terms of where this is coming from, is focused not only on open science initiatives, but also translation. Research translation has been referenced just previously related to the certified professional audience and in connecting that audience with our membership audience and other researchers to ensure that we can translate the science, we can translate the work from the labs, from the field research projects, and otherwise to drive solutions for the societal issues. And this can manifest itself in food security, in reducing greenhouse gas input packs. This could be water quality enhancements. This can be a number of ecosystem services that we derive from agricultural supply chains today. But it's that recognition and focus that we need to translate the research into very practical and usable products for the audiences that would utilize that science on the ground, which would be our certified professionals and others in similar roles. Sylvie, before I jump to the next 2 strategies, would you have additional thoughts on these 2 strategies before we move on?
I think the knowledge to action, that actually comes from a bunch of different perspectives. Yes, it's about making sure that our science is useful and usable for practicing professionals who are out making recommendations. This was in response to the articulation of that concern, but then also this open science is also in response to thinking more broadly about who has access to our wealth of member science, this product that we produce, and trying to make sure that economic status in other countries doesn't mean you don't have access to our journal articles to use them for designing your own research or making your own recommendations. So there's a couple different lenses you can view the knowledge to action through, and all of them are intentional. They're all aspects we want to consider.
Great additions, really appreciate it. I'm going to jump to the next 2 strategies, and then we'll have time to further reflect upon these and hear your input and your comments and questions on these as well. So the next 2 strategies, and again, these have, I guess, coming back, these haven't been prioritized necessarily by membership survey or anything like that. But within these, the next 2 strategies would be a focus on engagement, inclusion, and diversity. We will promote and enhance diversity and inclusion at all levels throughout ASA, and to renew our longstanding commitment to diverse stakeholders for broader membership and leadership of ASA for creativity and strong governance. And then the next strategy would be around an enhanced business model. leveraging comparative advantage of it as a professional society of scientists and certified professionals, and delivering new opportunities for knowledge transfer and services for an evolving stakeholder base to ensure the financial future of ASA. So these two, the first one is really looking internally and looking externally and asking how are we serving ourselves today? How can we bring in others from many different perspectives to help create this in a very inclusive atmosphere, transparent atmosphere, to enhance diversity and creativity and welcoming nature of the societies as well. This is I think critical to where we are moving. We've had a number of individual efforts that have been joining together, and raising it to the strategy level I think is incredibly important as we move forward as a science society to serve all scientists who could engage within ASA. So this is really extending that effort to be really welcoming, to be inclusionary in every aspect of what we do across the society, and think about how we engage to make that easy, to make our processes transparent and really inclusionary in thought and practice. And then around the enhanced business model, this is thinking creatively into the future. There are a lot of aspects that are evolving around us as scientists and certified professionals. And this is within the society, thinking creatively, thinking critically about how we deliver services to our members, to our certified professionals, and what that could mean into the future. We know, so currently, we focus at a membership service level or a societal business perspective. We focus a lot on our publications. We focus on our annual meeting and membership services as ways to drive connections amongst and support for our members and for our certified professionals. Going forward, we know there are some uncertainties as we are in an uncertain time right now through COVID-19. Annual meetings, our current annual meeting is far off that we're evaluating, and we're not planning in any way to cancel that. But there is a lot of uncertainty around annual meetings and publications, or with a push towards open science and open access, and what that means for generating revenue to support members just in general in society today. So we're looking closely at that, and we're recognizing that as we go forward, we're going to need to evolve with the evolving needs of our scientists, of our certified professionals, and the demands that are placed on them, no matter what profession they're in, whether it's an academic profession, an industry, a policy profession, or working with farmers on the ground or otherwise. So thinking creatively from that perspective too. So Sylvia, I probably missed a couple of things here as well. What would you have to redirect me or to add?
Yeah, I think I would just add that, both of these two strategies have elements of peering around the corner and trying to understand how our future membership will engage in scholarly communication, access science products, etc., and how we make sure that they are available to all and foster a sense of accessibility to science to all members. So,
great point. Great context. And Susan, I think Susan Chapman, this is now a great time for a break for hearing additional comments, questions from the audience. So any questions coming through? Any comments coming through at this point?
There are some questions coming through. One of them is about Crops and Soils magazine for CCAs is often too geographically focused. So translating science from Canada on canola isn't the same as translating science from Kansas on canola. How can you make the magazine less geographically specific and more applicable to the broader number of CCAs?
I think one element, first I can defer this a bit for follow-up conversation, but one element would be to connect Crops and Soils as a publication to some of our other efforts that we have ongoing to serve our members. So the publication or the story written in Crops and Soils, perhaps and I know we do a lot of this already, but we could always enhance it. We could connect it to our discussion boards, connect it to the researchers in different geographic regions, because we know that, as it just was highlighted, there are many different practices that are geographically specific and a lot of interactions that are geographically specific. And at the same time, also very practically, many different market considerations and risks and benefits that are very geographically specific. So we can still perhaps publish in Crops and Soils, but then create the more enhanced linkages to some of the more regionally specific experts and membership engagement tools that we have, such as the discussion boards, such as social media, and other places that way. That would be maybe an initial thought, but definitely could follow up in more detail there.
Yeah, I think that is the question itself is an excellent example of the type of feedback we need to receive in an ongoing way. One of the things that we have discussed, well, we just started discussing it last summer back in Florida, but how do we make sure that we are hitting the mark on products that are supposed to be broadly useful? And while it may be interesting to learn about how to manage canola in Canada, if you're managing it in Kansas, it's not exactly what you need to have. And so to have the feedback that, okay, well, maybe we can incentivize one of our more academic members to do a rigorous review of the literature that we have within our societies and pull out information that is specific to different regions, rather than just publish one thing that is suitable just for one place.
Thanks, Sylvie.
Yeah,
Susan,
so this may be,
any...
this may be a good time to just mention that the webinar for CCAs will be held Wednesday, April 22nd at 1 o'clock. And if you'd like to sign up for that, you can go to the certifiedcropadvisor.org website, and on the big slider show up right on the homepage, there's a link to register for that. There is a couple more questions on comments from CCAs, and a comment on open access as a CCA, not associated with a research university, but have occasional need for research papers. How can I access to find out if an article meets my needs?
Right now, oh, go ahead, Sylvie. Go ahead.
Well, I guess I'm trying to understand the question, but I think what the question is that if you're not in a university right now, you have to buy it, and you don't want to buy it if you don't know if it meets your needs. If that's the question, I completely understand it. And that is the type of thing that I really think we are going to be changing the way we publish, and we are going to move more towards a pay to publish model than a pay to read model. And yes, there are problems with that, and that we haven't figured out how to deal with yet, but that's the big shift that you're seeing, that we're seeing in the publishing world.
I would completely agree. And I've been exactly in that position myself as I worked in industry and worked within grower organizations previously, where it was tough. And oftentimes I would find myself reaching out directly to society staff or to the authors of the publications to learn more about it before trying to purchase. But recognizing that can be time consuming, and time is critical as we're making decisions on the fly. Susan, is there another comment or question?
There's one other question. Do we have an agreed upon definition of agronomy? I apologize because I've not been involved with this effort until now, so perhaps there already is an agreed upon definition, but it seems like we need to develop our strategy, to develop our strategy and objectives.
Agreed upon by whom, I suppose? That would be the question. I know the soils group went through an agreed upon definition of soils. I think they did that. I am not aware of a recent effort to collectively define agronomy with our members. I suppose it's an interesting thought to think about whether that's a need.
Yeah, we could, yeah, maybe we can come back to that one to think about that potential need and utilities for it.
I would be interested in learning about the concern is whether or not the concern is that the members of the society are making assumptions about what agronomy is that isn't uniform across, and that is somehow a negative impact, or is it because the rest of the world, like my mother, doesn't know what agronomy is?
Yeah, it'd be great to learn more about that, about where this question is coming from specifically, and then assigning the needs and understanding the utilities going forward. Broader public. I mean, I think most of us could agree the broader public generally doesn't understand what agronomy is at a broader sense. And as a I guess a tie to that, we can think about the different impacts on our daily lives, whether it's in a research setting or a certified or CCA type setting, working together with farmers. There are many impacts on us coming from potentially people who don't understand or know what agronomy is. So there's potential for information and education there as well. Susan, is there another comment or question? Any additional ones coming in?
Not at this time.
All right. I think given the short amount of time we have left, let's jump to the objectives. And we'll walk through these one by one, read through them one by one, and then open it up again. And again, as we're going through them one by one, please be submitting your comments, your questions specific to the objectives, what's in there, but also thinking about things that might be very specific to ASA that aren't included here as well. Recognizing we may defer on a couple of those things because of the cross-society objectives we'll talk about in the town hall next month, but very specific to ASA. The first one is first objective is looking at enhancing member engagement and leadership through ASA. Engage ASA sections, communities, members, and certified professionals in implementing the shared grand challenge. So that ties directly to the first strategy as well, and it takes it to a little bit more specific level. The second objective is around science translation and impact. Increase both the number and types, that would be categories, of research translational products produced by ASA by 25% each year for use by practicing agronomists to promote sustainable production of food, feed, fiber, and fuel. So that one tying very, very closely into the conversations we've been having, a number of the questions we've received today as well. The specific objective number 3 is looking at reach, diversity, and inclusion. Increase the diversity of society membership and leadership, our interactions with closely aligned professional and scientific societies, and our interactions with external organizations that promote sustainable production of food, feed, fiber, and fuel. And then the fourth specific objective to ASA would be looking at business development and growth. Explore new enhanced revenue sources leading to pilot investment in 2 new revenue positive growth areas. And there's this picture here on this objective is taken actually from the landscape analysis that was conducted for us by the Context Network, thinking about a potential future state for ASA and crop science and soil sciences, as well as to what different ways we could provide services or different different options to many different types of organization to create broader impact from the research our members conduct. Also thinking to membership service offerings to our members for connections, collaborations, and better serving our CCA audience as well. So those are the 4 specific objectives. I can roll back through those very quickly as just a reminder, and then we can open it up for your comments and questions on these as well. So the first one was looking again at membership engagement and leadership, engaging across the membership for implementing the shared grand challenge. The second one was looking at science translation and impact, the number of and types of products or research translational products, increasing those. The third one was in reach, diversity, and inclusion within society membership, leadership of our with closely aligned professional and scientific societies and other external organizations. And the fourth one was on business development and growth, thinking to new enhanced revenue sources to generate the revenue to support members and CCA audiences with 2 pilot investments in 2 new revenue positive growth areas. So before I completely open it up, Sylvie, would you have any thoughts and comments on these objectives?
No, I think, Nick, I think we're still sort of, this is definitely where we need input. We have spent, as a board, we've spent more time discussing the strategies and less time collectively discussing the objectives. And we really are in the draft stage of these. And that includes that, you know, if we're eventually going to get down to something we can do and know whether we're making ground against them, we need to have metrics. We need to be able to see whether or not we're making progress. And so that's why we've started to put in, okay, what would progress under this objective be? So that's why you're beginning to see metrics in there.
I couldn't agree more. And again, these town halls are an opportunity. It's one topic or one tactic, one opportunity to have your voice heard. But this will be an iterative process, and we're going to be looking for your input and your engagement throughout not only the draft, getting the draft to final approval, but then after we get approvals in that implementation process as well. Just as Sylvie mentioned earlier, this will be iterative, and we'll be looking for your input, your engagement as to assessment of how we're doing with these objectives, how we're doing with trying to utilize the strategies to create the impacts. So let's open it up with the last few minutes, and then I'll
Nick,
maybe
let me just add.
Go ahead,
Let
Sylvie.
me
Go
just add one quick comment, and that is, I should have said this right up front. We have all done strategic planning. We can all be either enthusiastic or groan when strategic planning is discussed. But the idea here is to move towards a living strategic plan. This is not something that, you know, we want to do and put on the shelf. This is something that we want to grow, that we want to morph as time goes by, so that strategic planning itself becomes embedded in how the organization moves forward and sustains itself and remains relevant.
Thank you, Sylvie. That is a great point, especially as we're wrapping up. That's a critically important point. And I couldn't agree more, because that's right on. So with this, Susan, maybe if I could turn to you with any additional comments or questions coming in from any of the participants.
Yes, there are definitely some additional questions. There's a couple around diversity and inclusion. So how will ASA reach out to underserved, diverse communities to grow the next generation of agronomists and educate the public?
I think this could take many first, this is really appreciated. And this gets into what Sylvie was mentioning on the specific actions and where we really need your input as to help guide us on this topic and several others. But initially, I would say there are a number of different strategies or tactics we could use to reach out. This could be reaching out to individual members, making calls to individual members for their thoughts, their perspectives around this very critical topic. This could also be reaching out to the membership or associations that serve different communities as well, and different types of scientists that could be serving different underserved populations as well. And this can be a whole host of different top populations. But it could be reaching out individually, reaching out to the associations, promoting calls for action, strengthening our own processes for how we think about inclusivity and diversity and our perspectives and our own internal processes. Are we throughout all of our leadership steps, through all of our communities, taking active steps, conscious steps to reach out and bring people in, invite people in? But it's also, and then also thinking about transparency and inclusivity in welcoming people in the invite process towards the leadership development process we have as a society as well. So again, this is an area we need your input, your thoughts, your perspectives on how we do this. What I provided here, maybe a few remarks, a few comments or thoughts, but would love to be guided by you on this process. Sylvie, would you have any thoughts or perspectives there?
No, I think that this is where operationalizing this. What are we going to do? We know what happens when we don't do much explicit, or with some of the efforts that we've had in the past, we know what works, on a sort of a smaller scale. So how do we become more diverse and inclusive writ large? And we know what we get when we set up the big tent and open the doors. So then the question is, who isn't there? Why aren't they there? How do we engage? And then implementing, as we are able, programs or creating opportunities, for example, for those that aren't sufficiently resourced to come to the meeting, making opportunities available, encouraging perhaps some portion of the membership to contribute to another portion of the membership, but also to work with partners to create opportunities to bring members into interaction.
Thanks, Sylvie. Susan, are there additional questions or comments?
There are. One is more of a comment. The present situation with empty grocery shelves, how can we use that to educate our neighbors more about agronomy and ASA in a moment when they may pay attention?
So if that's a great question.
Ahead.
Can I make a comment first? Because I just had this,
go ahead.
epiphany over the weekend where, oh my goodness, folks, science is back. We're back. And it's unfortunate that it's under these circumstances, but I was doing a lot of reading in the New York Times, et cetera, this weekend, where the trusted person now in the conversation is the scientist. I don't want to go into all the commentary on why that has happened, but that is not something I would have said a year ago. So it is an opportunity. I think here, I know we are already having discussions about what is needed for people to understand where their food comes from. To understand public health, but also just to understand food and nutrition better. Nutrition is sort of outside our area, but to understand our food system better. So yes, there is opportunity. It's which ones do we devote our attention to? Nick, I'm sorry, I couldn't resist, but
no, this is great, Sylvie.
And I matter,
Yeah, we've been waiting for this for a while. This is an excellent. I mean, it's an opportunity that and one that we certainly don't want to lose sight of, and that we could build upon even. to help us. Sylvia was mentioning, to help enhance the understanding of what's capable, what's part of our, well, first, what is our food security system or food supply chain look like? What are the different disruption points that could occur? But also, what are the points of security and safety within that supply chain? What are all the steps in place to ensure that we have a safe, reliable food supply chain going forward?
But this would be a great example, though, of something that we might want to partner with our colleagues in ag economics on, or something like that. We wouldn't want to be the experts on the economic or the distribution side of things or the nutrition side, but this would be something that we would seek to collaborate with other professional societies, other experts on, I would think.
Certainly, and from the industry perspective, in terms of the infrastructure that's in place to ensure reliable reliable food supplies to the population, and what it means in a disruptive environment like what we're under today, that this would be a great opportunity to pull those groups together. And I'm looking at the clock. I'm realizing we're past 3 o'clock. This has been a wonderful discussion. We could probably take Sylvia, if you have a little bit more time, take 1 or 2 more questions before the wrap-up steps.
Sure.
Susan, are there additional thoughts or comments?
There are a couple of other comments. It's suggested that it might be helpful to have a town hall with the CCA boards. As noted, we have a lot of impact and influence in our regions.
I love that. I love that idea. Yeah, we're just getting started with the town halls in the virtual format, I should say. We've been doing them at the annual meetings pretty consistently, but the virtual option has the potential to pull people together. I know we're moving it for many parts of the country. We're moving into a pretty tough time to engage the CCAs, given the field work that's been underway and will continue underway. So we're taking note of that as well. But I love the idea of engaging the CCA boards in the town halls. As Susan Chapman mentioned, we will have the CCA specific town hall. So we'll walk through these strategies and objectives again, and focus solely on the needs for the CCAs during that separate town hall. So that's an action towards that end goal as well. But I appreciate that comment.
And another question, quite a bit of the external engagement seems to be geared toward the areas between the research members and the CCAs and farmers. What about connections horizontally to embrace other groups that aren't traditionally agronomy that still feed the world, including horticulture, weed science, reclamation, to name a few?
Yeah, they should all be on the board, or all be on the table. I personally have had some conversations not only with weed science, but the Entomological Society of America, American Phytopathological Society, and historically, as a society, we've had alignments. We've had even MOUs with different science societies as well, those horizontal organizations. So certainly going forward, we're looking back at what was in place in the past, and thinking about how do we enhance that given those other organizations' current objectives and strategies and initiatives, and at the same time with our updates as we're moving towards our new strategic plan for ASA. How do we create the right alignment? This also could include other organizations that we haven't engaged with, civil society group organizations, policy organizations. It could be wide. Those non-traditional conversations actually can, from my personal perspective, can be some of the most rewarding by learning new tactics, new strategies for approaches to problems or issues, how to drive towards solutions. So certainly it's all on the table. But Sylvie, jump in, feel free.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think you'll hear more about some of the thinking that's going into those lateral type partnering when we look at the cross society objectives. because then we're looking at, you know, things that we might do, not just with the two other societies, but well beyond that. What do we want to do with the entomology society? What do we want to do with ecology? What do we want to do with weeds? And before COVID-19, there was probably some pretty healthy discussions on joint topic specific meetings that might be jointly sponsored, that kind of thing. We'll just have to see what the new world looks like in terms of meetings, but meetings aren't the only way we can partner. So we'll just be thinking harder about those alternative ways.
Yeah, thank you, Sylvie. That's a great point. Susan, I think we can hold the questions. I think with the last couple minutes, there may be additional questions that come in, but I just wanted to wrap up maybe or get closer to wrapping up with moving to where to engage in our timeline for moving forward. As Sylvie mentioned, this is an iterative process, and we're hoping that this strategic planning document will be an evergreen or living document, a living, breathing document that we can, as a society, can and from external partners as well, can very oftentimes refer to engage, to work from, but also to assess and review and update along the way. So again, your input, just as you're providing here today, is critical going forward. So reach out to your board members, reach out to your leaders within your communities, your sections, your divisions. We also have discussion boards, and we'll send out links after the fact as well to the discussion boards specific to this topic, the strategies and objectives, where we'll post these strategies and objectives and really look forward to your input. It'll be a similar place to where the landscape analysis document that's been referred to a number of times was posted, so you can look to that information. We'll also be moving towards social media. That's a place to engage us, to have the discussions flow, different topics posted. And as always, don't hesitate to reach out to headquarters staff. We love to hear from you. We love to hear your input. And this is such a critically important time to have your input. With everything going on around us, we need your input to move these draft objectives and draft strategies further towards completion. And I'll leave it on this slide, and Sylvie would welcome your thoughts and comments as well. As this is an iterative process, right now we're looking for member input, prioritization of the strategies, of the objectives. Our hope is that we move these draft strategies and objectives towards a completed strategic plan in June, and really transition to implementation steps at that point. Whereas then in July and August, September, October, we can move forward on the implementation and also launching this Grand Challenge Task Force that's been referenced. At the annual meeting, we are planning a number of different events to focus on the strategic plans and the Grand Challenge, and more information is going to be following through with that in terms of town hall events and other ways to engage and submit your ideas, your topics. Would also help us to assess our progress and work towards the objectives and the strategies. So I'm gonna pause, and Sylvie would welcome your thoughts and comments here as well.
Yes, I think at this point our intent is still to have the spring board meeting to be fairly focused on making good headway on this, and that's why we're anticipating launching the task force in July. I noticed there it says in-person meeting. I'm not sure whether that will happen in person, but and even if some parts of the country happen to be open, I'm pretty sure not all will be, and so we'll just be looking to make sure that we can get the participation one way or another that we need to get.
That's a great point. Yeah, that was probably way too ambitious to put in-person meetings for a July meeting.
Right before this call, we were on a 2-hour call with our dean talking about the summer and the fall, and so it's sort of sobering, but nonetheless, proper prior planning, and we'll be able to get done what we need to get done.
Yeah. Well, Thank you. I know we're 10 minutes past the hour, so we went a little bit long, but really appreciate your engagement, your comments, your questions along the way, and look forward to your continued questions, your continued input, because that's a critical step or a critical part of this iterative process that we're going through in strategic planning to make this a living, breathing document to really serve you as members, to advance the science, create the impact, and the partnerships to help us all out. So thank you again.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your week. Stay healthy and stay safe.
All right. Thank you. Bye.